Are you better than AI? I'm going to make the case for yes by talking first about failure and then human collaboration. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to show you a video performance of a piece of music that I wrote 15 years ago that I just finished re-engraving in my notation software, which is Dorico. And I'm not quite done with the actual printed version, but I was able to get all the notes put in to make a really cool score video that I'd like to show you at the end. So stick around for that. But first I want to tell you a story about a time that I failed miserably. And at the time it felt like the biggest failure of my musical career. So when I was in college, in undergrad, I had to perform a piece of music during student recital hour. And this is the hour of the week that all of the students in the School of Music get together and they play for each other. You know, usually you got to get your name on the list months in advance, and you perform a piece that you've been working on just to kind of, you know, workshop it, see how it does in front of other people. And so I had this piece, Beethoven Opus 10, number 2. I was a composition major with piano as my primary instrument. So I was not a performer. The point of me being in piano lessons was not to be a performer, but still, as a music major, you have to perform some on your instrument, even if that's not your primary thing in college. So I had never liked performance. I always hated it. I always got so nervous. I still do to this day. And so Opus 10, number 2, it's an F major sonata by Beethoven. I just had to play the first movement, but I remember just getting on stage and sitting at that Steinway, and I was shaking, like my hands were shaking violently. And I got through like the first page, and then there were these faster runs that just were super hard for me to play when I was that nervous. And my hands just completely shook off the keys. I just remember not being able to completely finish the piece, and just, it was terrible. And so, but fast forward a little bit longer, a few semesters after that, I have to take a class called collaborative piano, which, if you're familiar with it, some people call it accompaniment, but basically it's where you play piano with other people. Right? You might play it in a large ensemble. You might play it with a soloist. I always played with vocalists because their music is easier. But one of the things that was really striking to me is that even though I hated solo performance, I actually thrived when I was doing collaboration with other people. You know, it was nerve-wracking. I still got nervous in their lessons. I got nervous in their recital performances and nervous in their jury performances, which are their final exams. But I always loved working with other people. I've always loved playing in bands. I've always loved working with, you know, friends who were songwriters and just kind of jamming and enjoying the process of making music together. And that's really the point of this video, because the piece I'm going to show you at the end is, by contrast, what I would call probably the most important collaborative project I've ever worked on, because it's a piece of music that I wrote in grad school several years later with a friend of mine. Well, I wrote it for a friend of mine who is in the video. His name is Chris Lowry. He's the violist in the video. And he commissioned me to write this piece while I was in grad school, and he premiered it while he was still an undergrad at Vanderbilt. And this piece has just been performed a bunch of times by him and other violists. It's been performed in various places around the country, and you know, it's kind of got a life of its own. I've written other pieces, but none of them have ever really had much of a performance career on their own, except for this one. And so I'm going to show you a video at the end that Chris made. So Chris Lowry, the viola player, is the guy, he's the one in the video who's performing on viola, and Daniel is his pianist. And I'll put their information in the description below. And also I'll put a link to the original video, which is on Chris's YouTube channel. But I just want to talk about this for a second, because the process of engraving this piece. Now let me back up again. If you don't know what engraving is this process where a person will put music, whether handwritten or if they're a composer, maybe they're just writing directly into their notation software. But it's this process of taking music and kind of laying it out in your notation software in the most easy to read, easy to understand, easy to follow way, so that other humans can play it and perform it effectively and rehearse it without wasting too much time. And so even the act of engraving, even if you're not composing the piece, even if all you're doing is you're putting the music into some software and making it legible and understandable for another human to read, this is also a highly collaborative act. And I was thinking about this in the context of AI, actually, because, when we put a piece of music into our software and we are making it like we are thinking about user experience almost, where we're trying to figure out like where does the other person, where are they gonna need page turns? There are all these dynamics that I need to put in, like, getting louder and softer. And I have this music in my head, or it's on the, written down on the page. How do I make it where this other human, based on their own training and experience as a performer, will be able to play it like I hear it in my head, or play it like the composer originally intended? And so, robots could do some of this, but a lot of it is really just, it's about human interaction. It's about humans, coming together for shared musical experiences. And, so whether you're a composer or just an engraver, a music copyist, a performer, you're participating in this, very human activity of bringing music to life. And, I was thinking about this in the context of songwriting and even mixing, right? When we mix a song, and I'm not a producer, but I watch a lot of like production videos on YouTube. I love watching production videos. But it seems to me that everybody is after this. They're after a sound that's kind of random, off kilter, right? This is why we add things like saturation to sound, because it adds artifacts, it adds extra harmonics to the sound that give it interest, that make our ears kind of perk up, and when we're into composing with virtual instruments, for example, we're really attracted to this sound of the sort of human sound of inconsistency, right? We like imperfection. We like the kind of the exhilaration of going to a concert and hearing somebody perform something really well, but also realizing that it's not completely perfect. There are places where maybe they slightly mess up a little bit. And the cool thing is that every time we go to a performance, every time this piece of music that I wrote 15 years ago is performed, every time that happens, the pieces that we write, the pieces that we perform, they sound different every single time. Like it will never sound exactly the same way that it did in that moment ever again, right? So this piece that I'll play for you at the end of the video, it'll never sound exactly like that ever again. It's sounded many different ways. People have taken many different tempos. People have kind of ebbed and flowed in certain places differently than other performers have. And it's just a really interesting process of saying like, okay, I wrote this, it's written down, but these humans are making it their own, right? And all kinds of things can make the sound different, right? For example, if you've got an orchestra piece and you've got like 80 some odd people on stage, the number of people, the number of variables sitting on that stage, the stage of life that they're in, their level of training, whether or not they had a sandwich before the performance, their relationships, and all the things that play into their life, those things all affect the way that piece of music sounds in that very moment, right? The conductor might, like not cue somebody where they were supposed to, or, something will happen. And it's just this exciting, beautiful thing when it doesn't go perfectly. And so I just want to encourage you as a songwriter, as a composer, as a producer, whatever, whoever it is watching this, that we don't need to lean so heavily into AI as a tool to create for us, because just you making the sounds that you make on your phone, like if you record sounds and you make beats, or if you play an instrument, you playing that instrument is always going to be better than some pre-recorded sample. Like, you can do really interesting things with pre-recorded samples that you didn't make, but like if you make something yourself, that's 100% unique to you. Like, no one is ever going to make that sound ever again exactly like that. And so I just want to encourage you to really lean into your own humanity, because our mistakes, they lead us to the next step in certain things. Like, we learn from our mistakes or we don't. And we keep going, we keep writing, we keep trying things, we keep experimenting. Like, it's all just this really beautiful process. And so that's my somewhat rambly case for that you are better than AI. You always will be, because you as a human, and you've got that secret sauce. You've got that humanity that other humans want and are interested in. So do the things that you do really well, and just keep doing them. Show up, keep making the thing, and see what happens. So I'm going to play this piece for you. But before I do, I just want to read the program note to you. Now, this is a little bit outdated because, well, I'll tell you in a minute. But, okay, the piece is called A Day in Monroe County. And it's based loosely on memories of my childhood. Monroe County is in South Alabama, and its largest city is Monroeville. Monroeville is where I traveled almost every year for family reunions as a child. It is also where author Harper Lee grew up. And I wrote here, and where she now currently lives, but she passed away a few years ago. Interestingly, although I did read Lee's novel To Kill a Mockingbird, I think it was more specifically my exposure to the 1962 film adaptation of the book that most strongly influenced my childhood memories of Monroeville. These are at least some of the elements that were on my mind while composing A Day in Monroe County. This piece was composed for my friend Christopher Lowry, who is an accomplished violist and composer, and he is also the one, as I said, who's playing viola in the video. Incidentally, Chris is also responsible for the videography in the video that you're about to see, other than the music that I superimposed over his video. He's responsible for the videography, he's responsible for the mixing, the audio editing, the setup, all of it. He actually recorded my piece as a part of his dissertation project, which was a CD. I believe it's called Milestones, but I'll put it in the description of this video, and I'll link to his channel again so you can kind of get all that information. And then really quickly here, the first performance of A Day in Monroe County took place on February 11th, 2011 at Vanderbilt University's Blair School of Music. And violist Christopher Lowry and pianist Valerie Sue were the performers. So, without further ado, here is A Day in Monroe County.